I never meant for any of this to happen, but the night she looked me in the eyes and said, "You're the only person I can trust," something inside me twisted. Fear, guilt, excitement, all at once. And now here I am, telling you the truth I never had the courage to tell her. Before we go any further, hit that like button and subscribe, because what I'm about to share might feel like a movie, but every word is real, and it changed my life in ways I still don't fully understand. So, let me start at the moment everything broke. I wasn't supposed to be anywhere near the Admiral's family. I sure wasn't supposed to be sitting behind the wheel of his black SUV, pretending to be a quiet, low-paid driver who kept his head down. But that was the only way to disappear. Funny thing, right? A man with more money than he could ever spend, hiding in plain sight like a ghost. You'd think being a billionaire would make life easier. Truth is, it made me the biggest target in every room. People loved me for my money, respected me for my money, praised me for my money. Nobody ever cared about the man behind it. Not until her. The Admiral's daughter, she walked into my life like she owned the air around her, but her eyes had this sadness, like she was fighting battles nobody knew about. When she first smiled at me, I almost forgot to breathe. And I know what you're thinking. Why would a billionaire pretend to be a driver? Good question. I still ask myself that sometimes. Maybe I wanted peace. Maybe I wanted to know what it felt like to be invisible. Or maybe I was running from something darker. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. The first time she sat behind me in that car, I felt this strange pull, like fate had a sick sense of humor. She talked to me like I mattered. Imagine that, the Admiral's daughter speaking to a man she believed was just the help, while I sat there knowing I could buy the whole base twice before lunch. But then came the moment that changed everything. She told me she felt safe with me. Safe. That word hit harder than anything in my entire life, and that's when the real trouble started. Because safety always comes before danger, and love always comes before betrayal. But I'll tell you about the betrayal soon. First, I need to tell you who I really am, because once you know that, you'll understand why all of this was doomed from the start. And trust me, the way she found out, it was nothing short of a disaster. I guess this is the part where I tell you who I really am, the part I never told her, the part nobody was supposed to know. My real name? It doesn't matter as much as the truth behind it. What matters is how a kid who grew up with nothing somehow became the youngest secret billionaire in the country before turning 30. Sounds impressive, right? It never felt that way. Money didn't fall into my hands. It was thrown at me like a weapon. I built companies faster than I built friendships, and every time I succeeded, I lost another piece of myself. People think wealth gives you freedom. Trust me, it doesn't. It traps you in ways you can't escape. Every smile feels fake. Every handshake feels hungry. Every friend feels like a business move waiting to happen. And after a while, you start craving something simple, something real. That's why I disappeared. I stepped away from my companies, from my family name, from the kind of life most people dream of. I just vanished. And in my search for silence, I ended up behind the wheel of the Admiral's SUV. Nothing but a nameless driver and a cheap uniform that never quite fit me. Funny, isn't it? A man with more money than he could ever spend, hiding in plain sight like a ghost. You'd think being a billionaire would make life easier. Truth is, it made me the biggest target in every room. I still remember the first morning she stepped into the back seat, like the world held its breath for half a second and then forgot to start again. She didn't walk like someone born in the power. She walked like someone who spent her whole life trying to escape it. Her father, the Admiral, commanded ships, men, entire operations. Yet somehow he could never command his own daughter's heart. She slipped into the SUV quietly, almost too quietly, like she was afraid the walls might be listening. And then she looked at me. Not past me, not through me, at me. Do you know how rare that is for someone in her world, for a woman raised in a fortress of rank, rules, and reputation, to notice the driver? It threw me off more than I'm willing to admit. She asked me if I liked the job. Nobody ever asked me that.
Most people barely remembered I existed. I told her the truth, or at least the version of it I could afford to share, that I liked the silence. She laughed softly and said, "Silence is the one thing I can't find in my life." That hit me harder than it should have, because in that moment I realized we were both hiding from something. She hid from her father's shadow. I hid from my own. There was something about her presence, gentle but not weak, sad but not broken, that made it hard to breathe. And just when I thought she'd settle into her seat like any other passenger, she leaned forward and whispered, "I don't trust most people, but you feel different." Different. If only she knew how different I actually was. But that was just the beginning. And trust me, beginnings have a strange way of turning into storms. She started talking to me more after that first ride. Not in that polite, forced way rich families talk to staff, but in a way that felt real, like she was trying to breathe again after holding her breath for years. Every time she stepped into the SUV, she'd slide into the back seat with this tired look, like the world outside the car belonged to everyone else, and the world inside the car belonged only to her. And somehow, to me too. I didn't say much at first. I couldn't. One wrong word and I could expose everything. Who I was, what I owned, why I was really there. But she didn't seem to mind my silence. She said it felt safe. That word, again. She told me things I'm sure she never told anyone else. How the Admiral watched her like she was part of his mission instead of his daughter. How every man who approached her was more interested in his father's connections than in her heart. She said she hated the way people bowed to her last name and ignored her first. And all the while, I sat there in the driver's seat, gripping the wheel, pretending to be a nobody, while knowing I could buy the whole base twice before lunch. But the tension started growing the moment she started to look at me too long. I'd catch her eyes in the rearview mirror, soft, curious, searching, like she sensed something I was trying to bury. And sometimes, just to break the tension, I'd make a dry joke, something simple, like, if anyone asks, "I'm not responsible for your late-night ice cream runs." She'd laugh in this quiet, thankful way, as if humor was a rare permission in her life. But the more she trusted me, the more nervous I became. Because I knew something she didn't. That the closer she came to me emotionally, the closer she came to discovering that her driver wasn't who he said he was. Not even close. And the truth? It was only a matter of time before the cracks started to show. Because no matter how good you are at hiding, the heart always gives you away first. The shift was small at first. Tiny things that most people wouldn't notice, but in my world every detail matters. It started with the Admiral's men. Sharp eyes, stiff posture, the kind of soldiers who spot danger before it even steps into the room. They began watching me longer than usual, their eyes tracing me like I was a puzzle piece that didn't fit. And honestly, I didn't fit. Not in their hierarchy, not in their expectations, not in their comfort zone. The Admiral's daughter kept talking to me more, staying in the car even after we reached her destination, just to finish her thoughts. And every time she spent an extra minute with me, made me more visible. Then the whispers started. I heard two officers one afternoon, one of them grumbling, "Why does she talk to the driver like he's family?" The other answered, "Drivers don't look at her the way he does." That hit me harder than I realized I was looking at her in any special way, at least not until someone else pointed it out. And the Admiral? Oh, he noticed. You can always tell when a man with authority is losing patience. His silence becomes heavier than his voice. He'd glare at me through the tinted glass as if he could see through every lie I ever told. But the real tension came from her. She started asking questions, small ones at first. How do you know so much about naval security? Why do you drive like someone who's trained, not hired? Why does your phone cost more than my father's watch? Each question sliced through the wall I built around myself. And every time she asked, I'd deflect, joke, or pretend I didn't hear it. But she wasn't stupid. She watched me the way someone watches a storm forming at the edge of the sky. Quiet, focused, waiting for the first lightning strike. And the more she watched, the more danger grew around us. Because attraction was no longer the problem. Suspicion was. And when suspicion mixes with a secret as big as mine, Something always explodes. I just didn't know the fuse had already been lit. It happened on a night that the rain felt heavier than usual, like the sky was trying to wash something away. She slid into the back seat without saying a word, her hair damp, her hands shaking just a little. Not fear, more like exhaustion mixed with something deeper. I didn't ask at first. I never did. But the silence between us felt different this time. Thicker, heavier, almost painful. Finally, she whispered, "Can we just drive?" Nowhere specific, just away. And without thinking, I pulled away from the base, letting the road lead us into the quiet. After a few minutes, her voice cracked, just once, before she quickly covered it with a sharp breath. That single break in her strength felt louder than thunder. She told me she had just argued with her father again, that he didn't understand her,
Didn't listen, didn't trust her to make her own choices. She said she felt trapped in a life that looked perfect on the outside, but felt like a locked room on the inside. And then she said the words that shook me. "You're the only person who doesn't expect anything from me." I wanted to tell her she was wrong, that I wanted far more than I should, but I stayed silent. Because in that moment, she wasn't talking to her driver. She was talking to the only person she thought she could fall apart in front of. When her voice broke again, I finally pulled the SUV over. I didn't touch her, couldn't. But I looked back at her, and she looked at me with this raw, unfiltered pain that made my chest tighten. She whispered, "Why do I feel like I can trust you with things I've never told anyone?" And for a split second, I almost told her everything. My name, my fortune, my truth. But fear stopped me. Not fear of losing her. Fear of breaking the only genuine moment I'd had in years. So I did the only thing I knew. I listened. And for the first time, she leaned back, closed her eyes, and cried softly. Safe. For just a moment, in a world where safety didn't exist for either of us. But the thing about vulnerability? It opens doors, and it also opens wounds. And this moment, this fragile, dangerous moment, would soon become the reason everything fell apart. Looking back now, I should have known the calm wouldn't last. Vulnerability always comes with a price, and ours came the very next week. It started with a moment so small, but it cracked everything open. We were leaving the base one afternoon when a black sedan pulled in front of us. No warning, no signal, just bold confidence. My instincts kicked in before my brain did. I swerved around it with the kind of precision no regular driver should have. Too fast, too smooth, too skilled. She noticed. I could feel her staring at the back of my head like she was watching a stranger suddenly appear in my place. "Where did you learn to drive like that?" she asked. Soft, suspicious, too sharp to ignore. I mumbled something about practice, but she wasn't buying it. Later that same day, the real trigger came. My security team, men who were supposed to stay miles away to protect my cover, showed up at the edge of the base. They thought I wasn't looking, but I saw one of them lift a hand in a quick, subtle wave. A wave meant only for me. And worse, she saw it too. "He knows you?" she whispered. Not shocked, hurt. It was the first time she sounded like she was afraid of the answer. I tried to shrug it off, but then, disaster. One of the guards slipped. "Sir!" he called out before biting down on the rest of the word. Sir. That one slip was a bullet straight through my disguise. Her eyes widened, confusion twisting into something sharper, fear, betrayal, maybe even heartbreak. She demanded, "Why would a driver be called Sir?" But before I could answer, a camera flash exploded from behind the gate. A photographer, one of the few who still hunted me. And just like that, the truth I'd kept buried was rising to the surface, fast and unstoppable. She looked at me like she didn't even recognize the man sitting in front of her. And for the first time since she stepped into my life, I had no idea how to stop what was coming next.
There's a certain silence that hits right before a truth explodes. Heavy, sharp, unforgiving. That's the silence we sat in. She didn't blink, didn't breathe, didn't look away. And then she said the words with a steady voice that shook more than she wanted it to. "You're the only person who doesn't expect anything from me." And for a split second, I almost told her everything. My name, my fortune, my truth. But fear stopped me. Not fear of losing her. Fear of breaking the only genuine moment I'd had in years. So I did the only thing I knew. I listened. And for the first time, she leaned back, closed her eyes, and cried softly. Safe. For just a moment, in a world where safety didn't exist for either of us. But the thing about vulnerability? It opens doors. And it also opens wounds. And this moment, this fragile, dangerous moment, would soon become the reason everything fell apart. The Admiral's eyes were like steel, cold and unyielding, cutting through every lie I'd ever told. He didn't yell, didn't demand explanations. He simply looked at me, and that look carried a weight that could crush men twice my size. I swallowed hard, trying to steady my voice, trying to find the words that wouldn't make her hate me, or worse, make him see me as a threat. I opened my mouth to explain, but the photographer reappeared, camera raised, ready to expose everything. Instinct took over. I stepped out of the SUV and blocked the flash with my hand, calling my security team in a tone no driver should ever use. And that was it. That was the moment she knew. She stepped out of the car, eyes wide, watching as two armored SUVs pulled up, my real world crashing into the life she thought I lived. One of my men rushed to me. "Sir, we need to move you now. Your cover's blown." Her breath caught. I heard it, felt it, because she finally understood that the man she trusted, the man she cried in front of, the man she thought was invisible, wasn't invisible at all. When she spoke again, her voice trembled. "Who are you?" I looked at her, knowing whatever I said would break something between us forever. I never lied about how I feel, but I did lie about who I am. Her jaw tightened, hurt flickering behind her anger. "So tell me, are you my driver or someone I was never supposed to meet?" The answer sat heavy on my tongue. Years of secrecy pressing against a truth that was ready to explode. And before I could speak, the Admiral himself stepped outside the base doors, staring at me with the kind of fury that promised one thing. This wasn't just a revelation. This was a war. The Admiral's eyes were like steel, cold and unyielding, cutting through every lie I'd ever told. He didn't yell, didn't demand explanations. He simply looked at me, and that look carried a weight that could crush men twice my size. I swallowed hard, trying to steady my voice, trying to find the words that wouldn't make her hate me, or, worse, make him see me as a threat. I never wanted to lie to her. I wanted a chance to be seen for who I am, not what I own. He stepped closer, each movement precise, controlled. "And do you think you hiding behind a uniform would protect you? Protect her?" His words were sharp, but I realized then he wasn't just angry. He was testing me, testing the truth in my heart. The Admiral's daughter stepped forward, fists clenching at her sides. "Dad, stop. I can handle this." But he didn't step back. "No," he said, voice low and firm. "You don't know the half of it." And then he turned to me again, eyes boring into mine. "Do you really think she would choose you after everything if she knew the truth from the start?" The air felt heavier, as if the world itself paused. I wanted to shout that she already chose me, that her heart had already decided, but I stayed quiet. My silence wasn't weakness. It was respect. And then she said something I will never forget. I don't care what he is. I only care who he is. Don't make this harder than it already is." Her jaw tightened, hurt flickering behind her anger. "So, tell me, are you my driver or someone I was never supposed to meet?" The answer sat heavy on my tongue. Years of secrecy pressing against a truth that was ready to explode. And before I could speak, the Admiral himself stepped outside the base doors, staring at me with the kind of fury that promised one thing. This wasn't just a revelation. This was a war. After that day, everything changed. She stopped riding with me so often, stopped sharing the little stories that made me feel like I mattered. The Admiral watched her every move, guiding her away from me without saying a word. I tried to reach out, small texts, gestures, but she pulled back as if distance could protect her from the truth or from me. And every time I saw her from afar, my chest tightened. She looked the same, but everything between us had shifted. The trust we built was fragile now, and the weight of my secret felt heavier than ever. I continued my double life, moving between boardrooms and shadows, pretending to be someone the world wanted me to be, while hiding the man she had once seen. She started dating someone appropriate, someone her father approved of, someone who could never understand the man behind the uniform. Watching her smile at him felt like someone pulling pieces out of my chest one by one. And yet, I never stopped caring, not for a second, not even when it hurt so badly that I thought I might break. I kept hoping that one day she would see me. Not the billionaire, not the driver, but the man who had always risked everything,
just to let her feel safe, even for a little while. The separation was cruel, but it was also necessary. Because love, real love, isn't about convenience, it's about sacrifice. And for the first time, I realized that keeping her safe from my world might mean keeping myself away from her entirely. But even miles apart, I felt her presence, like a ghost that refused to leave, reminding me that some connections, no matter the distance or danger, can never truly be broken. Then it happened, the moment I had been dreading, the one I knew would come if we weren't careful. One rainy evening, I got the call. She was in trouble. Not small trouble, not something a driver or a billionaire could ignore. Danger. Real danger. Her car had been blocked on a deserted road outside the city, and witnesses said a group of men, powerful, dangerous, were pressuring her. My heart froze. I knew I couldn't wait for anyone else to save her. Without thinking, I left everything behind, slipping into the shadows, moving faster than I had in years. When I arrived, she was cornered, panic clear in her eyes. The same eyes that once trusted me, now wide with fear. I stepped forward, calm but commanding, showing her that she wasn't alone. She hesitated, confusion and relief warring across her face. Then it hit me. This wasn't just about protecting her physically. This was about showing her that my feelings, my care, my life were real. That I wasn't hiding behind wealth or secrecy anymore. I was standing there, risking everything, just for her. The men retreated once they realized I wasn't ordinary, and she clung to me for a second, trembling, whispering, Why didn't you tell me?" I held her close and said nothing. Words weren't enough. Actions were. And in that moment, she saw me. Not the driver, not the billionaire, but the man who had always been there, even when she thought she was alone. After that night, things slowly began to shift. She didn't speak at first, just watched me with guarded eyes, measuring every move, every word. But I knew she needed time, space to process what she had seen, what she had felt. Days passed, then a week, and finally she came to me, not with accusations, not with anger, but with quiet determination. "I need to understand," she said. "I need to know why you kept this from me, and why you risked so much for me. I looked at her and felt the weight of every secret, every lie, every moment of hidden truth pressing down. Because I couldn't let anyone touch you. Not the world, not your father's expectations, not even me. She hesitated, eyes glistening, and whispered, "I wasn't angry because you were rich. I was angry because you didn't trust me." And that hit me harder than any storm, any confrontation, any betrayal. I reached out and took her hand, steady, firm. "I trust you now. But I needed to make sure you saw the real me, beyond the money, beyond the lies. That's all I've ever wanted." For the first time since everything began, she smiled at me, not carefully, not cautiously, but fully, freely. And in that smile, I saw forgiveness, understanding, and a fragile but growing trust, a trust I vowed to honor. And as we stood there, hand in hand, I realized that reconciliation wasn't about erasing the past. It was about proving every day that love could survive even the deepest secrets. Just when I thought we had found our balance, life threw one last curve. The Admiral, who had watched every step we took, finally smiled, not with approval, but with a quiet acknowledgement. "I knew all along," he said. My jaw dropped. "All along?" I asked, heart racing. "Yes," he replied. "I let you both learn on your own, to see who you truly are, and if your hearts were strong enough to survive the truth." She looked at me, stunned, then laughed softly, shaking her head. "So all of this, the lies, the secrets, the danger, was a test?" I could only smile, exhausted and amazed. The lesson was clear. Love, trust, and courage matter more than titles, wealth, or appearances. And in that moment, I realized something incredible. She had fallen for me, the man, not the fortune, not the image. And I knew no matter what the world threw at us next, our connection was unshakable. Because sometimes the richest heart isn't the one with money. It's the one brave enough to risk everything for love. If there's one thing I've learned from all this, it's that love isn't about wealth, status, or appearances. It's about trust, courage, and being willing to show your heart even when the world expects you to hide it. She fell for the driver, yes, but she stayed for the man he truly was. And that is the kind of love that survives secrets, tests, and storms. So if there's someone in your life you care about, don't wait to show them who you really are. Be brave, be honest, and maybe, just maybe, love will find a way, even against all odds. Thank you for listening to my story. If you felt every heartbeat of this journey, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. Trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming next. And one last thing. Tell me in the comments, would you forgive someone who hid the truth to protect your heart?